Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Saddleback webinar this week. I'm Liz Mangus, Literacy Specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. Welcome to another great webinar. As you are logging in, of course, locate your control bar, which is at the bottom of your web browser window. That is where you'll find the chat, the Q&A, and the live transcript icons. We do want you to chat with us today. Just be sure that you go to the chat and you select everyone from the little drop-down menu there to ensure that everyone participating today can see your comments. If you have questions throughout our session, you can go ahead and put those in the Q&A area. You can put them in the chat too, but we're more likely to catch them if you put them in the Q&A. And then if you would like to take advantage of subtitles, you can click on live transcript and select show subtitles from there. Let's see, we'll get started right at 3 o'clock Eastern time. Let's talk about Twitter. Saddleback is on Twitter, and our presenters today, Dr. Denise Furlong and Cecilia Zimmer, are also on Twitter. So say hello, follow, let everybody know that you are joining us for this conversation today about newcomers. And I'm going to go check the chat right now. Chat, here we go. If you could go to the chat and select everyone from the drop down and then just put in there where you are joining us from. We'd love to see who's here. Hi, Robert from Long Island. Welcome back. And while people are doing that, let's say hello to Denise and Cecilia. How are you? Welcome, first time presenters on the Saddleback webinar series. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having us.
We're so excited. Thank you so much.
We are very glad that you are here, and we have a lot of people interested in this topic today. So thank you for volunteering to share your expertise with us. All right, let's go to the chat. We have Arkansas, Indiana, New Jersey, Kentucky. Welcome, everybody. How many of you are counting down until the end of the school year? Houston, Texas, welcome. Connecticut. So I know my daughter, who's in 3rd grade, is definitely counting down until the end of the school year. We're getting close. South Dakota, welcome. How many of you are finished at the end of May? And how many of you are finished in mid-June? That's what I want to know. When is the end of the school year for you? May or June? Mid-June, okay. End of May, mid-June, May 25th. See, it seems pretty evenly split to me. May 26th, okay, Trisha, yours is coming up. T-minus 21 days, Fernando, who's counting? May 23rd, okay. Can you believe it's gonna be May, like in a couple of days, right? That's wild. Where did the time go? Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I hope you are all starting to plan your summer vacations. Maybe some of you are going to be working summer school and getting some extra cash. Who knows? All right. Well, and where are you joining us from today, Denise and Cecilia? Where are you located?
We are in Monmouth County, New Jersey, and we are sitting right next to each other.
That's right.
We are coming from Georgian Court University.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us once again. Let me see, we have 50, the numbers are still climbing. We're up to 53 and more will happen as we get the session going. All right, so it's just about that time to officially launch. So our topic today is first steps to welcoming our newcomers into our schools. Now, I know that when we met, we talked about this topic. I said, it's going to be like April or May by the time you come on. Is that a good time to have this conversation? And you said, newcomers, they come in all year long. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. You know, this doesn't have to be a beginning of the year school topic. We need to be prepared and have systems and processes in place for whenever they walk in the door, right? So joining us to have this conversation today, Dr. Denise Furlong and Cecilia Zimmer. Let me give you a brief introduction. So Denise Furlong is an assistant professor and director for the Reading Specialist Program for Georgian Court University in New Jersey. And she has over 20 years of experience teaching multilingual learners spanning grades K-12. And she has a book, she's the author of Voices of Newcomers, Experiences of Multilingual Learners. So, she's also the founder of Furlong Educational Consulting. So that is Denise. And for Cecilia, she is a longtime ELL advocate, and she holds a Master of Arts in Education with a concentration in administration and supervision. And she is the supervisor of bilingual ESL in Freehold Borough, New Jersey, where she uses all of her expertise to inform program administration and build specialized supports for her students. A lot of expertise in the virtual room today. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to let you take it from here.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming today. This is probably our favorite topic. So let's just continue from here. Okay, so this is us, and these are our dogs. So in order to get to know us, we just thought that you would like to see something kind of lighthearted about us.
And near and dear to our hearts.
Very true, very true. Okay, so as you do with your students, we started with content objectives and language objectives. I'm not going to read them to you. It's just really important to us to kind of follow the protocol that we do share with our students. In order to address the content of what we're teaching, we really do have to pay special close attention to the language that our students will use in order to acquire that content.
And just so you know, that as a teacher, you also give them language objectives. And that's basically so that we can discuss key concepts regarding the areas of need for our newcomers. And we'll continue this discourse via the social media and in our context within our school level.
Okay, so from my book, Voices of Newcomers, Experiences of Multilingual Learners, a newcomer's arrival day may be compared to a visit to an amusement park funhouse. Nothing makes sense, and things keep coming at you in your face. A mixture of apprehension, terror, and excitement could explain the feelings of that first day. And for us to really make this a safe and welcoming environment for our newcomers, we do have to understand these types of feelings. And they might be feelings that we have no reference for, but we have to be prepared, we have to be empathetic, and we have to be patient.
That being said, this here is a data map from the EdTech company Inlier Learning. I've included their handle at Orly Klapholtz and Merari at Twitter. You can follow them there. So what's nice about this data map is that it will, if you hover over your state, it will tell you that your state's definition of what a SLIFE student is. And what you'll notice is that all different states have different definitions for SLIFE, and some states actually don't even have a definition for SLIFE. That being said, students in grades in New Jersey, students in grades 4 through 12 who've experienced any kind of disruption in their education in their native country or even in the United States are considered SLIFE students.
In the past, we were doing some research over the past couple of years. And in the past, some of these definitions were more quantifiable. Like a student had to miss a certain amount of schooling, such as 2 years, or be perhaps 6 months, 18 months, 2 years below grade level. Now, what we're finding is that states such as New Jersey, they're taking that number out because really the disruptions in school, there doesn't have to be a certain amount of months that they missed to indicate that they need these access points.
So definitions are helpful, but they don't always give us the whole picture. We need to know who our newcomers actually are, who our SLIFE really are. And we have to acknowledge that and celebrate that. Move on to that. So our newcomers in SLIFE are people that have life experiences that shape their perspectives and their backgrounds. We can learn from them, teachers of the community. Our students have so much rich cultural background and heritage from their countries of origin, and they can bring that into their educational environment. We have to remember that they are people that are loved by their families and their communities, and they are the future multilingual adults and will be valuable community members.
And if we're talking about newcomers and SLIFE, all SLIFE are newcomers, but not all newcomers are SLIFE, and we're going to be getting into that.
Just to remember that essentially our students are not blank slates. All living is a learning experience, and our students may have learned skills that are not necessarily taught in public schools or in schools at large. They may have a wealth of knowledge and in experiential learning.
Okay, so we talk about the lens. We talk about the lens that we use as educators, as community members.
That's right. And so we invite you to look through these lenses. Take a moment to scan and ask yourself, which lens do I use? Or which lens seems to be prevalent in my context? Then think about what possible consequence there is for that perspective. So feel free to share that in the chat with us, because this is a learning experience for us all.
Liz, you can let us know if you see anything in the chat.
I sure will. It usually takes a minute before those answers start to pop up.
Yeah, I think we kind of sprung it on everybody.
Yeah. So one thing I see is this, I'm sure somebody's probably typing this right now. And as soon as I say it, they're going to be like, no, Liz, why did you say that? Teachers of newcomers must be able to speak their languages to effectively teach them. Well, if that's the case, where would all the teachers come from, right? There are so many different
Right.
languages out there. So that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that. So
And that's the thing. Sometimes people use that language difference as a way to say, no, it's not me. It's that child, that student is not my responsibility. And that's just not acceptable. We just can't embrace that at all.
So Adam says it could be that students who are not perceived as, quote, all our students, and that they only belong to the ELL specialist, right? And Robert says validate, affirm, build, and bridge with these students. Davina says some teachers may feel uncomfortable with the use of translanguaging in their classrooms.
I've seen that as well.
Right, and those are all valid points.
I use the lens of CI is important while I see people around me as seeing Ls as English learners as responsibilities of the ESL teachers. Yeah.
And I think that, and Cecilia could speak to this better than I, but I think that that is something that has to start with the administration. It has to start with the top, that we embrace everybody. And you know, multilingual learners, English learners don't just belong to certain populations of teachers. Same thing with students with IEPs or 504s. Like, I think embracing and the access and the inclusion across the school, I think that's what's going to be how we change this.
Right. It's definitely a cultural shift in thinking. It all has to tie into how welcoming, you know, we are to our constituents. How are we welcoming them into the school district? And you know, just using that lens of equity and inclusion is extremely important. And it does start at an administrative level, and it's vastly supported by teachers. So it really is something that has to happen holistically within a school district.
And Alexandra says all teachers are language teachers 24/7.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
All right. I will step out of the way and let you continue.
Okay, so how do we support these students before we start? And these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. Points of access, student ambassadors, all staff are trained, not just the EL teachers or not just the gen ed teachers who happen to have ELs in their classroom, the welcoming environment, the point people, and a packet that welcomes, that gives the information that they need. So
we can provide welcome packets that include as much pertinent information as possible to ensure that the students are feeling welcome, not only the students, but also the parents. And this is also a way to make them feel safe in the new environment that they're in.
You know what? It's not a substitute for an orientation or an in-person meeting or via Zoom or however you can connect with these families. However, I just know when I started a new place, to have a reference guide that to which I can refer back, having to do with the uniform information or what to do when there's inclement weather. Sometimes I can't process all of that information at once, and to have the guide to which I can refer would be very, very helpful.
Right. And just to iterate in case it's not obvious here, the welcome packet should be in a language that the parent speaks. That's very important, and the parent should have a point person to be able to refer back to, almost like a liaison of sorts. Sometimes that's a teacher, sometimes that's a clerk, sometimes that's a secretary, anyone who is able to communicate with the family.
And let's also be clear, sometimes families come to our districts speaking languages that we haven't encountered before. That's okay. So perhaps that needs to be something, you know what, we don't have the welcome packet right now, but we will get it to you as soon as possible. And you get it translated and ready for this family as quickly and as authentically as possible. So just because you haven't had a family who speaks a particular language yet, that's just going to be adding that language to your repertoire.
So considering that some of our students are coming to us with various experiences, sometimes traumatic experiences, it's extremely important that we take time to tend to their socio-emotional well-being as well. So we need to help make them feel safe and welcome in their new environment. That's pretty much the tone of this entire presentation. But definitely we have to give them the skills to be able to feel safe in their environment. And listed here are just some of the things that they should know and they should be referencing, and the teacher should also be circling back to frequently until it becomes a part of their everyday experience.
So while we focus on survival English with our newcomers, obviously first, for instance, having a visual that they can share, because perhaps other staff members or teachers might be giving them directions, for instance, in the hallway. I'm thinking intermediate school level. Mm-hmm. And the staff member or the teacher may be getting annoyed if the student's not following the directions that they are so clearly sharing. To have some sort of a visual just to indicate, oh, I'm Dr. Furlong's student. And then everybody knows, oh, that's a multilingual learner. Maybe I'm going to have to approach the student differently or provide more language supports or visuals. Okay, so something like that. And again, when we're talking about anxiety, to have students feel safe, that people aren't going to be yelling at them because they're not following those directions that they just don't understand, I think that's huge. Emergency drills. We don't know the situation from which some of our newcomers have come. We don't know that those loud drills, or the hiding, the shelter in place, we don't know that that's not going to trigger some feelings of past trauma or present trauma. Okay, something to really consider. Students need to know when they're going to have the opportunity to eat next. They need to know the bathroom protocol.
These are simply things that we take for granted with our students who don't have a second language, or quote unquote monolingual. But all these things that we tend to take for granted or assume of a student, we cannot assume with a newcomer or a SLIFE student. And with a SLIFE student especially, like Denise said, there could be some trauma, and some things may be very triggering to them. So things, just providing the student with some grace and patience goes a long way, and especially in the socio-emotional aspect of it all.
Absolutely. And providing that support for the families, that judgment-free zone where families understand, yes, I can come to conferences. It's safe.
And choice and voice.
So when we talk about that, a lot of times, we find that teachers will see these students. Of course, they want to tell me all about their story. Of course, they want to share their journey to coming to my classroom. Well, you know what? Maybe they don't. So having that choice, and if the child wants to share their experiences, that's phenomenal. And if they don't, still phenomenal. Okay, so having them in charge of their own story is crucial.
Right, and it shows them that you respect them, obviously, and it also ensures that we're not using that as a point of reference or a point of launching some sort of lesson. We don't want to use their experience to inform other students. They have a right to their privacy, and they have a right to express what they feel with you when they are ready.
Oh, and the students, perhaps with whom we do not share language, teaching those technology skills and utilizing and leveraging that technology to try to best find those ways to connect. I think we're so lucky nowadays that we have these things. And let me be clear, the technology isn't perfect, but if it allows us a little bit of a bridge to make those connections and to foster those relationships, I think it's a blessing. Okay, Liz, we're going back to the chat.
Yes.
Other than language, what is the biggest challenge you find that your newcomers face? However, we're not going to be speaking as teachers right now. We're going to be speaking from the point of view of a new coming student.
Well, there's a comment in the chat that came in just a couple of minutes ago from Allison, and she said she had a student that needed to know where she was at all times. I was the one adult that could communicate with her and that knew her story and understood her. So I actually think that it speaks to this prompt that you are currently sharing with us as well. That's certainly a challenge that a student might be facing is going back to the safety conversation we were just having. So let's see what else we have. The layout of the building, how to get home, trauma from their travel to the US, classroom schedule, procedures and expectations, cultural differences with teacher-centered teaching versus student-centered learning, making friends, a sense of belonging, not feeling discouraged. I see other students in friend groups and I want that too. Yeah, so lots of good comments coming in. There's a tendency to gravitate towards friends who have a common first language and culture. So making social connections can be difficult for many multilingual learners, missing their families and not feeling like they belong. Yeah, so,
Liz, I'm not getting choked up, you are.
I don't like anything on my lunch plate.
Yes.
That's, yeah.
We take for granted, right?
Right.
How we eat, what we eat.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing this, everybody. This gives a lot to reflect on.
Really powerful stuff.
Right. And this, just listening to the teachers, our audience, putting themselves in our newcomers' shoes is very special. But it also shows me as an administrator, as an educator, just how much it is that you guys are taking in, right? This is definitely a work of heart, never mind a work of art, but a work of heart. And I could see how, especially post-pandemic and everything that we've been through these past couple of years, how much our teachers are truly heroes and how much they are really putting on the line for these students and how much of these students they're taking home with them. So kudos to you all. I say this all the time. I don't know if I could have done teaching in this pandemic era, but let it be said and just know and that I acknowledge how much you guys have really gone forward with how you're dealing with students and working with students and families and just not giving up on them. So thank you.
It's those connections. You know, again, that's what it comes down to.
Yep. So going back to, I guess, the administrative lens, the administrative side of things, we have to, once a student registers into our schools, we have to give them a home language survey. So a home language survey is basically a list of questions that attempts to gather whether or not the child has a second language in the home and whether or not that child should be screened for language services. So these are only some of the questions that typically are given out by our registrar. It is in the language that the parent speaks. And in my district, at least, most of our newcomers are Hispanic. So this form is in English and in Spanish. And many times our secretaries or myself will help them fill out the form. So aside from these questions, there are also questions that when I meet a parent and I want to get more information, these are actually a jumping point for further discussion. So in the Padlet that we'll share with you, you'll also see a document that has these questions, but also follow-up questions that can be appropriate when you are speaking to a parent. So that's something to keep in mind. I find that the home language survey is definitely a way for me to be able to engage with the parent and to get to know the student a little bit more. And then what that helps me do is that helps me convey that information to the teacher even before the teacher receives that student in her classroom.
This could help with placement decisions
Mhm.
and support. And you know, you're hearing that we can't kind of keep talking about points of access, and we can't forget points of access for families as well. Oh, speaking of placement. Okay, so placement is really tricky. And sometimes teachers view these students coming in as their academic level. And if we have a 7th grader or a student who age appropriately would be in 7th grade, who has little literacy or difficulty with phonemic awareness and really learns more on a much younger grade level, there are some teachers that feel that that would be an appropriate place for this child to be placed. And it is crucial that we place these children age appropriately. Looking at a child as more than an academic level, a Fountas and Pinnell level, or a linguistic proficiency. Because of their social and emotional health, mental health, these children need to be placed with their age appropriate peers. Marginalization is not acceptable, whether it's geographic, whether it's, you know, if there is a self-contained program for newcomers, which sometimes may be appropriate, those children must have the opportunity to interact with their same age peers who may be speakers of other languages, who may be native English speaking peers. Do you want to talk about the ILP?
Sure. So an individualized learning plan is something, it's more of a living document, and it's a document that can be instituted, especially as you're receiving students that are coming from different backgrounds, different skill levels, different proficiency levels. So that pretty much can be a plan. It's an action plan, basically. What is it that we want to accomplish by the end of the marking period, let's say, with this student? What kind of skills do we have to ensure that the student is acquiring before moving on to the next either curriculum or language acquisition function? Those kinds of things are very important because it sets the trajectory of the student's language acquisition and their academic knowledge and their academic progression. That this is something, again, that is not too dissimilar from an individualized education plan, an IEP, but what I would think is that this plan is something that is more manageable, easier to access, more efficient in the sense that we're able to make changes in that plan as needed for the student's progress. So it's very individualized in that sense. And there is an emphasis on ensuring that it's a live document. So we're not going to keep doing the same thing if the child has already mastered that skill and so on. So it's something that, again, would follow the student throughout the year. And maybe at some point, maybe they don't need that individualized learning plan as much because they've reached that level that gets them on par with other language learners. So it's really in an effort to ensure that the program is working for the student and the student's needs are actually driving the program.
We kind of consider that like a roadmap. Roadmap for the teachers, roadmap for the students, and it kind of gives it's not like it gives permission, but it gives the guidance that teachers need to say, okay, we may not have the can-do descriptors yet if these students are not taking standardized tests yet, but it can give that language portrait that is going to give the teachers the roadmap that they need to best meet their needs. And again, the students' needs are what has to drive the program, not the program.
The thing to remember is that all students have to have equal access to special programming. So be it special services or gifted and talented, these are all things that they have a right to as students in U.S. schools. It might be that we need a little bit more time to get to know the student, but there's no reason why we should delay any kind of programming that is necessary for the student.
They cannot be excluded based on their eligibility for language services.
So once we decide that after looking at the home language survey, that the student should be screened, we have to use a state-approved language acquisition tests, a language proficiency test. And whatever test it is that the district is using is largely based on what the state determines is an approved language test. We can screen obviously in English to check their language proficiency, but we can also screen to check their proficiency in their own language, perhaps a reading assessment in their own language, just to see where their starting point is, and hopefully glean some of that transference from their L1, their first language, to their new language. We can do writing samples. We can do drawing on any language topic. That's all important information. It gives you a sense of what the student knows, obviously, and what they can do. And it also gives the students, I feel it gives the students a little bit of encouragement. It shows them that we care about what they learn. We care about what they know in their own language and what they bring to us from their culture.
Providing those different options in terms of the written language production, such as writing at the word level, writing at the sentence level, writing at the paragraph level, writing in your language, your dominant language, writing in the language that you hope to learn, translanguaging, providing those like flexibility and those expectations is really powerful, because again, that just means that we value what they have to say, and we're not judging how little they can write if they can draw as well. We could talk about recordings, even small Flipgrids. I know some teachers use Flipgrid or something similar, even to get to know how to pronounce names correctly, because then again, that's really important. If you're doing a Flipgrid and your newcomer can kind of speak to whatever it is that the assignment may be asking, that may be something that's more comfortable than the written language at that point. I love things like the Burke Reading Interviewer, if there's something similar, in which you're asking the student's perspective on reading. You're asking, what is your experience on reading? Do you know someone that's a good reader? What makes them a good reader? And it really gives a lot of insight into literacy experiences and possibly what we can do to kind of to boost those skills and to support positive experiences with literacy.
I think that that you can try as an assessment or even as a survey, an interest survey, is providing the student with an assessment to see what kind of experiences they may have had or want to share. What are their goals? Who do they see around them that they look up to? And this is all a great way to get them integrated into the school community. It's a way to help discern what kind of leadership they may be led into, how they can be part of the classroom community, the school community. And it's also a way to make them feel included. Also, a self-survey, a socio-emotional learning survey, would really help to provide supports for students, such as bilingual counseling. Going back to the chat previously where you all were telling us how your students need you. They really do need you, right? But what they really need also is someone that can counsel them in their own language. We can do many, many things, and counseling may be one of them, but we also have to worry about teaching them as well. So we can't be the sole bearers of all these aspects of a child's wellness and holistic needs. So it's really, it behooves us to look for those bilingual counselors, and they are far and few between, but hopefully we'll get more, coming into the field. And yeah.
Let's go back to the chat, Liz. So write in the chat, what else would be helpful for you to know about your students that maybe, like, let's crowdsource here, that we can include on in HLS, home language survey.
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see what we come up with. As I said, sometimes it takes a moment. Robert says education level.
Mm-hmm.
Frequency of other languages heard at home.
That's a great one.
So far, everybody else is still thinking literacy level in the first language, interrupted education.
And I just want to make a point here that, yeah, you can ask these in the initial, but you can also ask these questions when you're calling the parent, just to tell them how their student is doing. Those calls home that really emphasize how well the student is doing and how they're acclimating and so on. Those are all gateways into learning a little bit more about your student.
Well, Sarah says that we need the home language survey to stay simple, but we can have a more elaborate conversation or follow-up interview to get more information.
That's correct.
So medical history as necessary, preferred language, interests, strengths, support needs, important beliefs, what they want to do in the future. So we can explain that education is important in order to achieve their goal or the dream. Does the student come home happy or frustrated? So interesting thoughts and questions. Thank you, everybody, for sharing.
One other question that I just thought of just now that would be important is, what does the parent feel their role is in a child's education? And, the reason I ask that is because culturally, some cultures will say, well, here's my child, you educate them. I'll make sure they do their homework, but you educate them. So, I think it's important to find out what their take is on their role in their child's education. And then that can open up the conversation about how they can partner with the school community to ensure that their student meets with success.
That we value.
Right.
We value those families. And and really like we can be a team. How do we build on the strengths? So we really want to stress our newcomers need a clear pathway to engagement. Are they represented in the peer leadership programs? Are they on student council? Are they on the sport team? Are they captain of the sports teams? To really kind of see where your school or your district is, take a look at the list of names on the student council. And do they represent multilingual learners? Maybe not our newcomers, maybe within the first 2-3 years even. Do they represent our multilingual learners? Are they the captains? Are they on stage for the school plays? So take a look at that, and that's going to tell you how integrated and how welcomed these newcomers are in your school community. How is the authentic integration of the home cultures? Do we go beyond Hispanic Heritage Month? Do we go beyond Black History Month? Do we go beyond, those specific holidays? How about going beyond Chinese New Year? Do you have that kind of literature in every classroom that would be mirrors or prisms or sliding doors? Translanguaging. Do we allow it? Do we celebrate it? We have to do more than allowing it. The admin and staff. Who is trained in sheltered English instruction? Who is trained in culturally responsive pedagogy? The collaborative learning. Do you only have your multilingual learners paired with bilingual students who may speak their language, should they be available? Or do you intentionally pair possibly learners who may not share a language, but are kind and patient and friendly? Do you look at collaborative learning as employing those bilingual buddies who are going to provide the instruction that you feel that you cannot? And Cecilia could speak to ways that her district includes those families.
Right. So in our district, we've done many different types of programs to ensure that we're including our families, that they're feeling welcome and celebrated within our district. We have parent nights where the parents can learn how and what the students are learning, and they can help how to engage their child in learning very easily with whatever they have at home, because learning is not just academic learning either, right? And it's just a matter of engaging their child in conversation, because whether they're conversing in English or Spanish, it's still an oral language development, and it's all language. And we just want to emphasize that students and families have a language repertoire that should not be dismissed or forgotten or ignored. They can bring that and they can develop that, and that's only going to strengthen their transition into English learning. I find that the teachers that actually work the programs for our families, they do such a phenomenal job because their heart is invested in reaching parents to help their students. And now, it's been a work in progress, but I think we've gotten to a point where the families do feel like they're accounted for, they're feeling engaged. They feel like they can easily pick up the phone and call me, a supervisor of a program. They'll call their teacher. They're always engaging with Twitter or our class dojo, great things that help them have a peek into their child's academic life and get that sense of pride and be able to use that to talk about with their student when they come home. So it's all about ensuring that there is communication within the family unit, outside the school, and also in making sure that we have programming and and that teachers are available as advocates for these families, because that is creating the partnership that is very much needed, especially for our students that are learning a new language and really need all the support that they can get.
And even like supporting the literacy at home, we have some students who speak languages with a somewhat similar alphabet to English, and then we have some students perhaps from Asia, perhaps from other countries, where the alphabet and even perhaps the direction in which one reads might be different. And reading in the native language, no matter what that alphabet or no matter what that looks like, is of supreme importance. So anything, or like Cecilia said, like, you know, even that family talk at home, you know, building the vocabulary in the native language is going to make that child that much stronger academically and as he or she is acquiring English. What do you do today? Okay, so I'm a big fan of fun facts because I'm all about building the schema in like sneaky ways. You know, that you're building the schema of like just life experiences and life events, world events. So on the morning announcements, even to just include either a fun fact to just make sure that different cultures and countries and that everybody within the school feels represented at some point. Welcoming in different languages. Again, all of them that represent the community. A couple years ago, I was an in-class support teacher in a 5th grade, and we had a student from Albania. And I couldn't tell you how to say it now, but every time someone sneezed, we said, God bless you or bless you in Albanian. And we all kind of laughed, and he just sat a little bit straighter. And it's these small things that you can do to kind of, you know, or maybe you have a student that speaks a different language. Well, maybe that's how you say goodbye every day. Maybe, you know, so these small things to kind of just make these students and these families feel seen and feel welcomed. Again, mixing up the collaborative learning. Don't always have those bilingual buddies doing that. And moving beyond the holidays and special days. These students need to know that they are seen and they're important when it's not the day that they're supposed to have the read aloud that represents them. Talking about the classroom libraries and the district libraries. You have to make sure that if you have 60% students from a particular country, China, something, you have to ensure that not only are those languages represented in the library, but we need picture books with characters that look like our students. Talking about geography, nobody needs to be marginalized, whether it's within a classroom or whether it's within the school. So thinking that maybe you're going to put all your multilingual learners in the back right corner because that's really where the ESL teacher can target her instruction. But no. Is it easier? Yeah. But do they feel like they are part of the rest of the class if they were always in the back corner? Yeah, no. And that would entail the ESL teacher kind of weaving in and out of the class and probably helping other students, because isn't that what we do as teachers? And those multilingual learners are going to understand that both teachers are there for everybody.
Yeah, and just piggybacking off of what Denise just said, including the multilingual learners, and interspersing them, for lack of a better term, within the classroom environment, it shows them that you're treating them with the same dignity and respect as the other students. You're not segregating them. You're allowing them to see what other students are doing. And you're allowing the other students also to see what it is that our students are contending with. You know, a kid that's a general ed student that can read and write and understand, now he has someone sitting next to him that that needs more help and needs things presented differently. And that shows, in my mind, that helps show the general ed student how to have empathy. It helps them exercise some empathy, and it helps them exercise their knowledge too, because maybe they feel compelled to help that student. So it has a lot of silver linings or potential for growth within the entire classroom. And knowing that there's more than one teacher and both teachers are addressing the needs of all students is also a way of ensuring inclusivity and equity among all the students.
It age appropriately, of course, acknowledge if something is going on in the home country. If there, God forbid, is an earthquake, is there something, your students age appropriately need to know that that's important to all of us. And we love professional book clubs. We did one with My Family Divided 2 years ago, and it really provided us like a forum to respectfully, you know, discuss and understand what perhaps some of our students might be going through. Okay, we don't have to read these, you know, we just have to acknowledge that low stakes opportunities, safe, where students are going to be able to take a risk in using that language are crucial to them, like acquiring more and making those connections through language.
It's also a matter of knowing and understanding your students' strengths and weaknesses. Maybe they're not ready to come out of their silent period. Or as I've seen during pandemic times when we were doing virtual learning, some kids came out of their shell because they were in front of a computer screen. So they felt better, they felt safer, you know, using that computer screen versus speaking to someone next to them, and so on and so forth. But all these low stake opportunities for language production are really dependent on how well you know your student, and giving them the opportunity and safe space to be able to take those risks, and knowing that no answer is wrong. We're all just learning. So they need to understand that, and you know, what better way to do that than by helping them figure out what it is that they can and can't do, and setting them up for success is that way.
Oh, we love translanguaging. We love it. We love it. We love it. It's the authentic use of language, and it's, you know, and it's kind of the community of language users. So I know several people, ourselves included, who often translanguage just because there's a better word in a certain language that fits our needs. So translanguaging does not indicate that you do not have proficiency in one language or another. It's a way that our newcomers can show that they know much more than perhaps their English proficiency would suggest, number one. Number two, it's a way that you can kind of foster those feelings of connection and belonging.
It's a way also of having them make use of their whole language repertoire, because we can't discount that they have that language. Why not use it? Who's to say that we can't communicate in two languages at once? And it really helps, like Denise said, it really helps them feel empowered and feel like they can really contribute to a conversation, contribute what they know. They can also teach others their language as they're doing this translanguaging. I remember when I was teaching language arts, I had no problem with students, and this was many moons ago. I had no problems with students writing and just, hey, if you don't know it in English, just tell me in Spanish. I happen to be bilingual. I understand what you're saying. I just need to know that you know the content, whether it's English and Spanish, that's fine. This is how we learn. So it's a very unique and very, I would say, productive way of learning. And we should definitely not see it as a deficit.
Back in the day, I know it kind of was. It was called code switching. And as a language learner myself at that time, I would leverage whatever language I could, and it was kind of frowned upon. So even if we have students that perhaps speak Arabic languages or Asian languages, they can still like engage in this. So what I would suggest is, again, writing in your dominant language. And if you happen to know the word in the target language, English, just slip that in. And, or, if you're writing, and your language goes like in the opposite direction than English, then perhaps write as much as you can in your dominant language and then go back and change as needed. Or rewrite it if that's what the student wants. Like, that's the thing with this kind of view of the production of language. Any language is positive, is that students are in charge and students are empowered, and they know a lot, and they can express that how they want. Now, if my student is writing in Arabic, I'm not going to know what it is. But you know what? That's where the beauty of some of this technology comes in. Or that's where we bring out the technology and you do a flip grid and you show me pictures and you use the words and you communicate. But I celebrate any and all languages that are in your repertoire. Access points again. So the bilingual buddies. We can leverage those relationships and we can be happy, but they cannot be a substitute for a translator or a support teacher, or they can't take the weight of someone else's education on their shoulders. So we need to make sure that, yeah, we put them in groups together. Sometimes we don't, but we kind of create those stakeholders in all of our student success. So that collaborative learning, the friendship, we did talk about like friendship and the common languages. Well, number one, sometimes our newcomers don't have anyone with a common language. And number two, I've seen it where maybe there is a group of students who have a common language and maybe they just don't have anything else in common. And we really like, and for sure, we engage with people for different reasons and different things that we have in common. But to assume that common language means that students have to be friends, that's not necessarily the way it is. And what are the roles of educators as being stakeholders in every student success? Do you want to talk about peer ambassadors?
Sure. So some of our newcomers, when they are no longer newcomers, can really segue into being a buddy, a peer ambassador, someone who's already been through the trials of fire, so to speak. And they can be the ones that our newcomers are looking to. They can be the ones that are their access point person. The whole point is to engage our newcomers to eventually be able to go ahead and become leaders themselves. And I think that's just a beautiful way to grow leaders and to really exercise their social emotional learning as well.
I see that maybe the students that have been there for a year or two taking on these positions of leadership, I think is really powerful.
Right. It's a point of pride for them as well. All right, so, we're advocates. We're educators and we're advocates, and you can be a change agent in your district, in your sphere of influence. Just exercise your B's and T's. So your B's, just be informed. How are you keeping up with trends in ESL, in English learning? What kind of professional development are you looking to either be a part of, participate in, or even provide? How are you being reflective to show ways that you can engage your staff, your colleagues, anyone that has an impact on your students? How are you thinking of ways to ensure that there's shared responsibility for our students? Be intentional. How will you ensure that your students are successful? Sometimes you have to think ahead. Many times, all the time, you have to think ahead, right? But especially, you need to be intentional about how something is going to happen for your students. So something like the individualized learning plan is a tool that you can use to be intentional about how you're teaching your student and to make sure that they're progressing. And be relevant. Make sure that you can, walk the walk, talk the talk, understand the laws as they pertain to our students, be their advocate, explain what they really need. You will know your students well enough to say, this student needs this service and they're entitled to this service, and so on and so forth. So definitely, if you have to stand on the soapbox for a bit, do so, because sometimes you are the only advocate for that student. Okay. And another be curious, learn from other districts, make those connections with other teachers and leaders across the state through Twitter, through your personal learning networks. Seek teachers that have an interest and have a passion. That's something that they're doing, that maybe they're doing it in their classroom and you want to do something for your own students, but tweak it, obviously, to ensure that your students are meeting success with that. Another thing to really consider is trying to help parents stand out. Getting to know your parents as you do programs that include parents. They have a lot to offer as well, not just the students. They've been through a lot, they know a lot, they can really share their experiences, and this gives you another avenue to really connect with your student. In your T's, take initiative. Don't be afraid to promote different ideas, something that you're thinking about that may be different than the norm. It's okay to take those risks. I hope that you're in an environment where you feel supported to take those risks. Present PD if you're comfortable, and provide resources, be it through Padlet or Google Site, anything where you can share information on your students, how they're doing, newsletters, so on and so forth. Those are all great ways to really get everyone on the same page with what it is that's going on with your program and your students. And one important thing to do also is to get involved with ensuring success for your students. So that may mean that you have to sit on a committee that makes a decision to place a student. So that could be at the end of the school year when you're deciding that students are going to exit the program, and so on and so forth, and where then they should be placed. And of course, take advantage, join committees dedicated to advocating for ELs, get involved on Twitter, your professional learning networks, attend free PD like Saddleback, and participate in idea sharing. That's so easy to do. You can text your friends, go on Pinterest, go on Twitter. There's just so many ways that you can learn and really not just learn, but learn to apply what it is that you're learning, and then sharing how it turned out. That's really important as well.
Okay, boy. Liz, you want to get involved?
Yes. So let's see. I forgot we were doing this. I'm not going to lie. Okay.
So,
So
yeah, so you can win a signed copy of the book, and we wanted to make this give different access points, right, Liz?
that's right. We want you to have some different options for being able to enter into this book giveaway. So with 2 ways to win, you can tweet a takeaway from the presentation and tag Saddleback, Cecilia, and Denise, or if you just prefer to email, if you're not on social, you don't like to tweet, you can email Denise. So that's about it, right? Let's leave this up here so people can get the email address, and then we'll make sure to go back to the Twitter handles momentarily. So people who prefer to tweet can do that. So actually,
And I won't do it until Monday in case someone that watches the recording.
okay, let's see. Let me put your email in the chat. Oh, I forgot the M. Okay. And then I'm actually going to take screen share.
Okay.
And we'll go back to here. Let me go back to this for now. So everybody can get a screenshot of the Twitter handles. And we'll tell everybody what's coming up next week. We have, there we go. We have Patty Vitale Riley joining us next week. So she's going to talk about the mini lesson. So how do we, if you like the mini lesson and you have a lot of multilingual learners, how do we make sure that we're angling that mini lesson to our multilingual learners so that they can get the benefits that we intend them to get? So this is next, I can't believe it's next week already, May. Please note that this is a Wednesday webinar, not a Thursday webinar. You can register on our website, or you can register through the email that we send out every week for that. And now we do have a lot of questions coming up. So Anthony, yes, we do have a PD certificate that, let me see, we can post the link to that, and it will also be emailed out as well later today or tomorrow. So we have lots of questions that came in. We have about 6 that are pending. Don't forget to check out our Go Decode. This is our phonics-based library for tweens. We just had a webinar on this a couple of weeks ago. It's a brand new product. If you are interested and need more information, please reach out to me. I can get you some samples, let you know what it's all about. All right. Okay. We have a request for the Twitter handles. So we'll go back. There are the Twitter handles. All right. And while we have those, let's talk about the questions. So there are 6. Robert wants to know if you're familiar with East Asian education systems that work more with memorization and teacher-centered learning instead of student-centered learning. It's more top-down, hierarchical, from a Confucian cultural heritage. Now, this is an interesting question because we do have students who come to us from East Asian cultures, and the whole philosophy of education that they're coming from is a little bit different than what we do. So are you familiar with that?
Well, here's what we've, done over the years is that we don't necessarily know everything about every culture, but when the students come to us, it's really our responsibility to, number one, view whatever their perspective, their experience, their educational background as something positive. And number 2, it's up to us to learn. So let's build on that. Let's build on that. It might be different than my own experience. Okay. But that being said, there's nothing that students haven't experienced, or the manner in which they've learned. There's nothing that we can't learn from.
Okay, thank you for that. Cecilia, did you want to add anything to that before I don't want to move on too quickly?
Yes, no, I agree wholeheartedly with Denise. It's a matter of also understanding how they have been educated. So that might be a records review. That might be the teacher taking the responsibility to see, well, culturally, how is it that the student has been taught? Like, what's the norm there? Just so that I can understand how he is familiar with learning. and then taking it from there
And building on it.
and building on it. Yeah, it comes down to, again, going back to understanding where they come from, where they've been, and how you can capitalize on that to move them forward in our educational system.
Right. It's like what you said earlier. The students are not blank slates.
Right,
Right.
right.
All right. We mentioned book studies earlier. Amanda wants to know, do you have a suggested book list for getting professional book clubs started at a school?
I can say I have a couple of books that in my head. And just before I forget, Liz, I don't know if you were able to put the link to our Padlet.
I did. In fact,
Oh,
somebody's
awesome. So in that Padlet, there's some resources. There's resources for books also. I am still adding things to that Padlet that I find that are useful. But I can tell you right now, we've done a book study with Denise's book. We're actually we finished one and we're rounding out another. But the voices that you see on Twitter, these are teachers that are like, these are voices from the fields. They are actually boots on the ground. They're going through it. Those are the book studies that I really like to focus on. I like practical tips and things that a reader can take and run with quickly and apply. So Voices of Newcomers is one of those books, of course. And you'll see on the Padlet that there's a Twitter feed or list in which I have some authors on there, as well as people that can are leaders in education. So, but I can certainly look for some of the books that would be really, you would really go hand in hand with a book club. That would be great, and I can definitely find some for you.
Carly Spina's book.
Definitely, I have that in my backpack.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, and Larry Ferlazzo has the upgraded and new ESL, what's it called? ESL teacher tools, something to that effect. But there are a lot of books. So if you want, reach out to me directly or Denise, and we can be in contact with you with some books.
Awesome. Thank you. And Diane wants to know, is there an individual plan template? I'm guessing that means an individual learning plan. Is that,
Right.
if there, you might have that on the Padlet already. I'm not sure. I just wanted to ask.
It's not on there yet, but I have one that is being tweaked, and that will also be on the Padlet. Again, that's something that is a template, and you can put whatever it is that you feel would best serve your needs.
Awesome. Thank you. What about this question? I love this question because it's such a everyday reality question. How do you answer this question commonly asked by non-ELs? Why do the Spanish speaking kids get to go with you? So it sounds like this is probably a pullout teacher. And he or she wants to know how to answer that question. It could be tricky because you don't want to emphasize differences or make it seem like there's some sort of deficiency that needs to be addressed, and that's why the student is having to go with you. And so it's an interesting question. What do you think?
So I used to go into classrooms and they would say, "Oh, the special guest star is here," and I was like, "Oh, I kind of love that. I need to just carry a sign around with me. I'm the special guest star." So what I would say is, and I have heard this, and I've said, does anybody know what kind of teacher I am? And more often than not, believe it or not, especially if I do go into a classroom in which I spend any instructional time as, a push-in teacher, most of the students feel that I'm a writing teacher. And we talk about the writing, we talk about the reading, and we talk about that. So what I generally would say is that, I'm just focusing on a different part of the language. So then we step out for a little bit, but then we come right back in and we kind of go full steam ahead with the support that they're getting, and again, like we are focusing on boosting, the power of yet. And sometimes some of us need to step out for a few minutes to kind of boost ourselves up to get back in the game.
Great answer. Thank you. And we're just about out of time, so I want to get this one question in here. Alice wants to know, can we talk about the do's of a bilingual buddy, encouraging our non-ESL teachers from using said buddy as a translator and an educator is very tough. Excellent point. So again, this goes back to expectation setting and classroom and school culture, right? But I'll let you elaborate on that.
Do you want to do that
Sure.
one?
So I think just ensuring that the buddy understands his role, his or her role. So that has to be an agreed upon kind of list of things you should and should not do. And that's really like a contract between the student, the buddy, and the teacher. The teacher really has to express her expectation, his or her expectations to the student. And the student needs to feel comfortable enough to say, well, I don't know if I can do that. The teacher should say, well, that's okay. That's why I'm here. So there needs to be that communication. The buddy should be someone, obviously, that is knowledgeable, empathetic, maybe has already been in that situation where he had a buddy. And so just having that student reflect on, remember when you were in this situation? So that's how we would approach it. And just always going back to the fact that the teacher is the person, is the adult in the classroom that is helping the other students. And that the buddy always has the teacher to refer back to. They should never feel discouraged or upset that they can't find a way to assist. They should just feel supported by the teacher to know that they'll have their back.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
It's not the job of the bilingual buddy to do any of the instruction or to be the translator all the time. You know, I think if there's a quick question, that's important. But any sort of preparation that the Jenna teacher, the EL teacher, anything that someone can do ahead of time to provide as support for this student would take it off the bilingual buddy's plate, because it shouldn't be on there anyway.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much for that answer. And thank you everybody for your participation today. We still have comments and questions coming in, but we've got to wrap it up because we're a little bit over time today, but thank you so much for your engagement, everybody. This was a great session. Thank you to our presenters. Great job. Great webinar, great content. We appreciate you both for sharing your expertise, and we'd love to have you back on in the future. So once again, we'll see everybody. Next week's webinar is on Wednesday. So we'll see you Wednesday, and have a great rest of your evening. We'll see everybody soon.
Again, Liz,
thank you so much.
Thank you for the participants. And if there's any questions, feel free to funnel them through Liz or directly to us. We're happy to help.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.